Hey guys, what's going on? Justin Fuller, ex-Honda salesman, tech lover, and today I'm your host, and we're going to be reviewing the 2025 Honda HRV. That's right, Honda's smallest SUV. So, is it worth the money? How does it stack up against the others? And is it different from a 2024? We're going to go all over that and more. So one of the first things you're probably wondering is, what is underneath the hood of this thing? So let me pull you on in and let's talk about that. So you are looking at a 2-liter non-turboed engine putting out 158 horsepower. This is then running to a CVT transmission and then out to 2-wheel or all-wheel drive depending on what you pick. So while we're here, I want to throw up a horsepower comparison so you can see how does the 158 horsepower coming out of this 2-liter engine stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. So I'm going to throw something up on the screen. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you were shopping for a 2024, it is the same engine and same transmission, so no major changes underneath the hood. Now, outside of that, if you wanted to shop maybe the sister SUV, the CRV, understand that that vehicle has a 1.5-liter turbo engine putting out 190 horsepower. All right, guys, so here we are at the front of this vehicle, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to see what the front fascia of the vehicle looks like, just so you can get a feel for the grille, the lights, that sort of thing. But while we're up here, I want to talk to you about 0 to 60 times. This vehicle goes 0 to 60 in 9.4 seconds. Now, in the world of compact SUVs, that's not great, but it's okay. It'll get you down the road. So I'm going to throw a comparison up on the screen so that you can see how does the 9.4 seconds stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, 2024 going to be the exact same. Or if you jumped over to the sister, the CRV, right, you're looking at anywhere from 7.4 seconds to 8.7, depending on if you pick hybrid or non-hybrid. So chances are, if you're shopping a compact SUV, gas mileage might be important to you. So let's talk about that. First, I want to let you know this uses regular unleaded gas, so you don't have to worry about premium gas or anything like that. But MPGs, you get 26 in the city and 32 on the highway if you're in the 2-wheel drive model, or if you jump to that all-wheel drive model, you're at 25 in the city and 30 on the highway. So it's decent, but not awesome, right? So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, if you're shopping in 2024, it's going to be the exact same, so you could shop pre-owned, save yourself a couple bucks. Or if you wanted to jump up to that sister CRV, you'd be looking at 28 in the city and 30, I want to say 6 on the highway. So even though it's a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier, it somehow gets better gas mileage coming out of that 1.5-liter turbo than this 2-liter non-turbo. While I'm down here, I want to talk to you about ground clearance, but before we do that, I wanted to give you an opportunity to see the EXL model 17-inch alloy wheel. So it's a pretty decent looking wheel, but honestly, if you jump down to the Sport, it's actually a little bit nicer and it's an 18-inch. So on here, you've got 7 inches of ground clearance to work with on this vehicle. Now, I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if it's a 2024, going to be the exact same. Or if you jumped over to the CRV, depending on the all-wheel or 2-wheel drive, if you picked it, you're anywhere, I want to say, from 7.4 inches to 8.2. So I want to stop real quick and go over some trim level changes and differences, right? So we're in the EXL. We're in the very top end. Below this, there is a Sport, and then below that, there's an LX. So what I want you to understand is, if I'm in this EXL, and I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Right now, I'm looking at spending roughly $31,000 on an EXL. If I drop down to the Sport, how much money is that going to save me? But what is the list of items that I'm going to have to give up to do so? Because you might find that the EXL isn't quite necessarily what you need, or it's just not quite in the budget, or it just doesn't make sense, right? So understand, if you drop down from the EXL to Sport, this is what you're looking at, and this is how much money you could potentially save. Now, just to take it one step further, if you wanted to go from EXL all the way down to the base model, it's kind of a big jump, but maybe you would be interested in doing it for some particular reason. So I want to throw it up on the screen so you can see how much money would that save you, but then additionally, what is the list of items you should be giving up by going from the top end to the very bottom end. So chances are, if you're shopping compact SUVs, cargo space is going to be important. So let's talk about that for a second. The first thing I want to point out is this is a manual tailgate, so they don't offer a powered tailgate in this vehicle. But while we come in here, you've got 24.4 cubic feet of cargo space from the back end to the second row. Now, while I'm back here, I'll just point out a couple things. You do have your tethers and anchors in case you need to set up something like a car seat, and then you do have tie downs as far as that goes as well. Now, if I flip this guy up and lift the plastic, you'll see that you do have a spare. It is full diameter, just not full height. So understand, it's not about as small as a donut. So while we're back here, I want to throw up a comparison so you can understand how the 24.4 cubic feet of cargo space from the second row back stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, a 2024, the exact same dimensions. I think you see the theme here. 24 and 25 are pretty much identical vehicles. All right, guys, so let's talk about the full capacity of cargo space you have from the very back end all the way up to the front row. So you're looking at 55.1 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this thing. It's actually a pretty good amount, and it's flat, so it's very usable, right? Depending on what you're storing. If you're camping, you want something that doesn't shift around, or you potentially might want to sleep in the car if you're a festival goer, or maybe you're a camper. Now, speaking of that, I'm a 6 foot, 250 pound man, so it probably makes sense for me to awkwardly climb in here and show you. So if I wanted to do this, could I lay perfectly flat? No, I'd probably have to go diagonal or on my side, but it is very doable. But while we're back here, I do want to throw up a comparison to see how does the 55.1 cubic feet stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. So go ahead and take a look at that. While that's up, I'll remind you, if you jump to 2024, we know this, it's the exact same thing. Now, if you were to jump up to its big sister, the Honda CRV, I will remind you, instead of 55.1, you'd be going up to 76.5. So significantly bigger if you were to jump up to that CRV. All right, guys, so here we are in the second row of this vehicle. Now, in the second row of this vehicle, you've got 37.7 inches of leg space in this vehicle. So I've got the seats pushed pretty much all the way back. As a 6 foot, 250 pound man, I can fit actually pretty darn well. So I've got a little bit of space to work with. Now, while we're back here, I want to do a couple things. First off, I want to throw up a comparison so you can understand how does the 37.7 inches of leg space compete against other makes and models out there in the world. So I'm going to throw that up. Now, we know the rule about the 2024 are the exact same. Now, if you jumped into like a Honda CRV, it would be roughly 41 inches. So you could gain yourself 3 to 4 inches depending on. But while we're back here, let's talk about some other things as well. Back here, I want to point out that you do have leather interior. So part of being an EXL, you're going to get leather inside of the vehicle. The one thing you don't have in the back here that's kind of a bummer is you don't have air vents back here, which you might be able to see. It's a hot day in Texas, I'm sweating a little bit, and you don't have USBs or USB-Cs back here. So you're going to be depending on using the USBs and everything up front, along with getting air from the front to the back. All right, guys, so here we are in the front of this vehicle. So once again, you do have the leather interior that runs along the seats, center console, shifter, and my steering wheel. So a nice feel to it. But while we're here, I want to talk about a couple things. First, you can see the layout here. It's interesting, right? It's kind of an interesting shape. On both sides, you have a USB-C and then a gap in between. I guess you could shove the wires in there. I don't know if it makes a ton of sense, but I guess it makes it feel a little bit more open. And then as you move up, 2 cup holders, a standard USB, and then you do have a wireless charging inside of the vehicle. Now, while we're up there, I'll point out that you do have 41.9 inches of leg space in this thing, which is a lot. So if you see I hop in here, I have got, man, I could have been an NBA player and still fit in this car. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 41.9 inches compare to other makes and models out there in the world. So I'm going to throw that up. While that's up, I'll just remind you, 2024, the exact same, no changes there. If you were looking at the CRV even, it's actually less, it's 41.3. So this vehicle has more leg space in the front of it than its larger sister, the CRV. So right now you're looking at the 9-inch touchscreen that comes standard inside this vehicle. Really quickly, I just want to throw something up on the screen so you can understand, depending on trim level, it is going to affect the screen size and the potential amount of speakers that you get inside of the vehicle. So take a look at that and let's continue on. Let's take a look at the steering wheel real quick here. So I just want to point out that it's not as convoluted as I see with some cars where you get in and there's just buttons and knobs everywhere and buttons behind and all these different things. This one's a little bit more simple as far as the setup goes, which I do like. So over here, you've got your home button, and then from here you can scroll and you can see that menu scrolling behind me. I'm not going to walk you through the entire menu because I think you can understand the basics of this, but there are some features that I want to talk to you about, and that's going to be the safety features. So I'm going to scroll up here and let's get to the safety support setting. Now, under safety support, right, you can select this. There are going to be a handful of different safety features that live here. So the first one is going to be road departure mitigation. What this feature is if I'm starting to drive off of the shoulder of the road, the car can give me an auto alert and then actually vibrate the steering wheel to say like, hey, wake up, pay attention. You're driving off the road. Super cool feature. Understand you can turn all these features on and off from right here. When you come down blind spot information system. If you're not familiar with what blind spot information system is, there's an icon that lives in your mirrors right here. When a car is in your blind spot, that will actually light up. From there, if you start to get over, it'll actually give you an audible alert to let you know, hey, there is somebody there, so you don't accidentally hit them. Now, next after that, you're gonna have low speed braking control. So what that means is if I'm backing up or moving slowly in a parking lot, it can actually apply the brakes if it's looking like I'm gonna hit somebody, but first it'll give me some audible alerts. Now, additionally on this vehicle, you do have parking sensors. So you're not gonna find that on the trims below it. That is standard in this vehicle, and they are on the front of the back of the vehicle. And that's that standard sound that you'll hear when you start backing up and you're the beep, 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 that kind of thing, right? So I think we all understand the basics to that. Now, the next one down is collision mitigation braking. So this one's a pretty cool feature. When I'm driving down the road, if it's looking like I may potentially rear end a car, first, what it's doing is it's using radar down on the road to bounce off the car to detect it in front of me. If it's looking like I might potentially hit that car, it can give me an audible alert, it can flash in the dash, and then actually apply the brakes of the car to help prevent the accident. So a super cool feature. Now, all of these you can turn on and off from right there. But I bring up those to talk to you about the right side of the steering wheel. On the right side of the steering wheel, there are some additional safety features. So the first is related to your cruise control. When I get up to my speed, I could select this to set my speed, right? And you'll see that same indicator come on up here. From there, I can select an amount of boxes. Now, you may be saying to yourself, what does the boxes do, right? So what the boxes are going to do is when you see more of them, it's going to keep designated space between you and the car in front of you. Meaning if I'm going 65 miles an hour and a car gets in front of me and slows down, it will keep that designated space and slow me down. And then when I get out from behind them, it'll take me back up to my speed. So this way I don't have to turn on and off my cruise control, right? So that's adaptive cruise control. Now, if you're saying, hey, that's cool and all, but I don't necessarily want to use that, you can press and hold this button until you're beeping. They'll say cruise mode selected, and now it's turned off. Or to turn it back on, press and hold, and it'll turn it back on, right? So very similar to the collision mitigation braking, that it's using radar to detect cars in front of you, and it's using that for safety or for cruise control. Now, the next one is lane keep assist. So that is this feature right here. If I press this button, you're going to see that same icon come up on the steering wheel up there. Now, what that's going to do is use a camera up here to detect lines on the road. So if I drift a little bit to my left or a little bit to my right in a lane, it'll actually keep me centered. So that way, if I got distracted, I looked over my shoulder at my kid, my dog, whatever was going on, whatever the case may be, and I started to drift to the left or the right, it'll just pull me slowly back into the center of the lane. Now, what I like about this is you can overpower. So if there was a potential for an accident, I could still jerk the wheel and be just fine, but it's there just to help protect you a little bit more. Now, lastly, I just want to give you a brief rundown or walkthrough of the 9-inch touchscreen, just so you can get a feel for what it looks like and how it works. So on here, of course, it does have for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. I have my Google Pixel currently connected up to this. It is a wireless connection, which I really do like. So you can see, don't have to have my phone connected up. However, you can if you want. You will find that if you drop down trim levels, it is going to be a wired connection. So kind of a bummer there. I'd like to see it in all trims. However, in this vehicle, you of course have FM, you have AM, you do have Sirius XM satellite radio. You're going to get a 90-day subscription, after which you could continue it if you wanted to. You can get your trip computer. So if you want to monitor your current trip A, trip B, that sort of thing, understand that you can. USB, if you wanted to plug in a USB with a bunch of music stored to it, when maybe different folders, understand that you could absolutely do that. So understand you could store music to this, and that way if you live somewhere where you may not always be in service, sometimes that makes sense, right? Bluetooth audio, if you want to connect up multiple devices to the vehicle to listen to audio, you absolutely can. Phone, of course, you have Bluetooth connection via there. Now, general settings, this is where I get to like my equalizer, dimming and lightening the screen connections if I want to add a device, right? I believe you can connect up to 6 devices to a vehicle. Yeah, so 1 of 6. So pretty simple as far as what's there. Vehicle settings, this is where you're going to find things like my door lock setup, my window lock setup. So things like if I want to set up to where, when I'm getting out of the car and I shift the park, it automatically unlocks all the doors versus just my door. Or I want to control the keyless access setup to where I can set the walkaway auto lock to where when I get 10 feet from the car, it'll automatically lock the doors. Features like that are going to live inside of here. So just so you understand kind of the difference between the two settings. Now, clock, you have a clock with some basic screensavers that you can set up here. Kind of cool. It gives you the ability to customize this a little bit. Now, coming over one more, Honda Link. So Honda Link is set up to where you get one free feature in every single trim of every Honda. In the event that you get in a car wreck, they can call you. If you do not answer, they can then call EMS and report the last location of the vehicle, the year, make, model, color of the vehicle to try to help you, right? So this is if the airbags deploy, right? So that is 100% free. Outside of that, if you want to look at the subscription services, depending on the trim level of the car or what vehicle you pick, I believe you can go to, I want to say it's HondaLink.com or MyGarage.HondaLink. I'll throw something up on the screen so you can go kind of check that out and see what else is available out there in the world. Now, the last couple of features there, compass, understand you do have a compass built into this car. Kind of nice that you can take advantage of that. And then the last two, system update, it updates over Wi-Fi. And then smart shortcut, what this does, it just basically uses an algorithm. As you continue to select a certain thing over and over and over again, it'll fill in that thing into that button. And understand everything here you can move around. So if you want something in a different place, press and hold. This screen will pop up, and then from there I can start moving stuff around and replacing stuff. So very easy to do, and when you're done, just hit done. All right, guys, so really quickly, I just want to talk to you about Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So if you're not familiar with what this does, is it pulls some of the apps on your phone into the usability of the touchscreen, right? So I can jump down here and then this will show me any visible apps that I have that I can take advantage of. Super cool if you like using Spotify or Pandora or any of your mapping systems and you want to be able to pull it up on the screen, right? But understand you can do some customization related to this. So currently you can see my Spotify is right here, and then I've got some For You stuff, and then my maps are over here. Understand you can change a lot of what you're seeing. If you come down here, there's a settings button you can select, and from here you can actually scroll down to the bottom. You can change the layout if you want. So if you prefer to have the navigation a little bit closer to you, you can absolutely change this, right? A lot of different things that you can do in here and take advantage of. You'll also notice I have some like quick actions, right? So Chick-fil-A, Whataburger, and then my phone number. Now, if you ever want to set these up, very simple to do, and I'll show you real quick what these are. Chick-fil-A. So if I touch the Whataburger one, for example, what it'll do, it will drop in the prompt for me, and then show me the nearest Whataburger to me, and then from there I could select the one that I want and start going there. So kind of helpful if you're just looking for like a Starbucks or a gas station, whatever the case may be. Maybe there's some specific destination you always want to be able to get to, right? Now, the second option here is setting up a contact, right? A quick call. So I can press this and it'll immediately call my Google phone number. But speaking of that, if you ever want to get in contact with me, I always leave my phone number and email in the description of the video. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about your vehicle or something specific. Now, while we're here, I want to show you how to create these and of course how to rearrange the order of all this stuff. So if you come down to the very bottom and you press customize, it'll then launch your launcher. Now on here, if I want to rearrange anything, all I've got to do is grab that item and shift it, right? So easy enough. And then once I want it to take place, turn the car off, turn it back on, basically have to disconnect and reconnect, right? But if you want to create an action, I would go to create action. Now from here, if it's call a contact, you just go find the person you want to add and select them, right? Super simple to do that one. The second action is going to be an assistant action, right? So this is where I may want directions to nearest Wendy's. So what I've done there is I put in the direction I want to give, the command, and then under that I've named it, right? Once I've done that, I can actually test that command right here before I add it, or I can just go ahead and create the shortcut. Once I do that, it's going to drop it at the very bottom here. And then from there, I'm going to want to grab this and pull it all the way up to wherever I want it. So if I want to grab that and drag it maybe all the way to the very top, that's what I would do. Once I've done that, if I want this to take effect, I'm going to need to restart the car. So let's do that. All right, guys, so I've restarted the car here. So now I can go into Android Auto. Once Android Auto loads up, I'm going to jump over into the options here, the menu, right? And then you're going to notice Wendy's is right up front. So if I go ahead and select that, it'll then fill in the prompt for me.
Wendy's is 5
and direct me to the nearest Wendy's.
By car in moderate traffic.
All right, guys, so we made it through the entire review, and now I want to go back and just revisit all those different comparisons. So if you're distracted, you're scrubbing through, maybe you're walking your pet fish, whatever the case may be, now let's go over them. So starting at the front of this vehicle, you've got a 2-liter engine putting out 158 horsepower. I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does that 158 horsepower stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's behind you, the 24 is the exact same, and if you were to jump up to the big sister CRV, you'd be looking at 190 horsepower, right? Now, related to MPGs, this car gets 26 in the city and 32 on the highway. So I want to throw something on the screen so you can see how does this vehicle stack up against other makes and models. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you jump to the all-wheel drive, you'd be looking at 25 in the city and 30 on the highway. So understand there are some differences there. Or if you went up to its big sister, the CRV, I believe you're looking at 28 in the city and like 34 on the highway. So pretty decent gas mileage for a larger and heavier vehicle. Now, when it comes to 0 to 60 times, let's be honest, this car is not particularly fast. It gets 9.4 seconds from 0 to 60. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the car stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, 24 is the exact same, and the CRV is a little bit better, depending on if it's a hybrid or non-hybrid, different torque and different engine setups, right? Now, when it comes to front row leg space, this car has 41.9 inches of leg space in the front of this vehicle. It is quite a bit. I could have been 6'5" and still fit in this car. I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 41.9 inches stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I'll remind you 24 is the exact same, and I'll remind you that if you were in a CRV, it's actually 41.3, which is 0.6 inches less than the HRV. Now, when you jump into the second row, you then have 37.7 inches of leg space in this vehicle. I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how that stacks up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I'll remind you, it's usable space. I'm 6 foot 250. I fit in the second row just fine with a little bit of extra space with the seats pushed all the way back. So very usable. 24, the exact same leg space. And if you went into a Honda CRV, just for the sake of knowing, you'd be looking at roughly 41 inches. So roughly 3 to 4 inches larger. Now, when it comes to cargo space, let's talk about that. So with the seats flipped up, if I'm going from the flipped up seat to the back, you're looking at 24.4 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this vehicle. It's usable. You could throw some bags back in there if you're an active person, have your dog back there if it's a smaller dog, I'll say, and be just fine. But I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does it stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I remind you, of course, 24, the exact same. And if you went from a HRV to a CRV, that 24.4 would then jump up to, I believe, 39.2. So significantly bigger when it comes from the HRV to the CRV when it comes to cargo space. Now, if you flip the seats down, you are then looking at 55.1 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this vehicle. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 55.1 stack up against other makes and models. While it's up, 24, the exact same, we understand that, but the CRV is considerably bigger. So if you need more space, or you're thinking you do, know that you could go up to a CRV and get 76.5 versus the 55.1 that lives inside of this vehicle. However, I will say the space in this vehicle is much flatter. So if you're planning to camp, right? Maybe you're a camper or maybe a festival goer and you like to sleep in your car, whatever the case may be, understand the space is much flatter and usable in this vehicle compared to the HRV that has this kind of slope to it. So I really do like that for this vehicle, even though it is a little bit smaller. Lastly, I want to talk to you about trim levels. So we're in the EXL, that is the very top model. I mentioned it earlier, there's 3 trims, the EXL, which is your top end, the Sport, which is right below this, and then the LX, which is your entry level. Now, if you're at the EXL and you want to drop down to that Sport, I want to show you a list of items that you'd be giving up, but I also want you to understand how much money you're going to save. I want to say it's roughly $2,000, but maybe you don't need every single thing that lives inside this vehicle. Now, if you're in the EXL and you're thinking, I want to skip the Sport and jump all the way down to the base model, that's kind of a wild thought, but maybe you need to do it. If you did, I want to show you how much money you would save, which I want to say it's roughly $4,000, and then what is that entire list of items that you'd be giving up by doing so. So hopefully seeing this helps you understand the trim levels a little bit better based off the amount of money and the items associated with it. Lastly, I just want to ask you for a couple favors. One, I hope you'll press the like because you like the way I'm presenting the content. 2, I hope you leave a comment if you have a question, a comment, or concern, or you just want to give me some positive feedback. I could always use it, right? Stroke the eagle just a little bit. It makes me feel good. 3rd, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel so when I produce content like this, you'll receive it. And then 4, I hope you'll share the video. You know, if you got some friends who are shopping compact SUVs or SUVs, maybe this will help them out, right? Understanding some differences, and maybe you like the way I'm doing the content, so you think that they'll appreciate it, right? So like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Later, guys!